Last summer, calls for police reform in Colorado came to a head amid a long season of protests supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. Outrage and calls to defund the police pushed state lawmakers to pass a groundbreaking police accountability law.
Many of Colorado's law enforcement officers are first trained to do their jobs at community colleges around the state, which makes it significant that the Colorado Community College system recently received a $1 million grant to reshape their law enforcement cadet training programs with greater emphasis on racial justice.
Landon Pirius is Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs with the Colorado Community College system. He's here today to tell us about those plans. Landon, welcome to Colorado Edition.
Thank you.
First, start by telling us about this grant and what the money will mean for law enforcement training and education in the community college system.
The focus of the grant is really on three different components over the next 3 years. And what we're really interested in doing early on in the first year is taking a deep look at our curriculum, our content of our courses, and the requirements to graduate from our law enforcement academies, and to infuse concepts of implicit bias, de-escalation, intercultural training, etc., into our curriculum so that our cadets and eventually our future officers will have that training and that knowledge before they get into the field. The second year is looking at how those courses are taught. So what we want to do is take those concepts of implicit bias, de-escalation, and intercultural training and develop a way that our cadets will actually get to experience those concepts hands-on and practice skills so that when they get into the environment, they'll have a better ability to practice what they learned rather than just think about what they learned. And then the third year is a focus more on the continuing education and professional development for existing law enforcement officers. So the concepts that I talked about, we would turn into continuing education experiences that we could make available to law enforcement agencies around the state.
I'm curious about what sparked this awareness that the way new law enforcement officers were being trained is inadequate. Why undertake this effort now?
Yeah, well, the events of this past summer kind of started with the killing of George Floyd back in Minneapolis. And our community college system talked a lot about, well, what can we do more than just issuing statements of support? You know, we have 8 law enforcement academies in our system, and we play a role in training future law enforcement officers. So from that kind of revelation, we said, well, what do our officers learn in the academy? Minimally, to become an officer in the state of Colorado, you have to have 556 hours of training. Only 8 of those hours dealt with ethics and working with a diverse community. And so we realized that if we took the time to really look at our curriculum and add content and add requirements, that we could do a better job of preparing our future officers to protect and serve a diverse community.
Well, of course, we're talking about a huge undertaking, right? Like the Colorado Community College system, tons of schools, tons of instructors, tons of students. Are there any other law enforcement training programs that are getting this right that you guys are looking to sort of shape how you guys are going to model it?
Yeah, you're right that this is a huge undertaking. And so we recognize it's going to take time. We also recognize it's not going to be easy, which is why we have a robust set of partners. From the get-go, we've been working with the Attorney General's office. In addition to our 8 academies, we also have 3 academies at other higher education institutions who are partners with us. But we also feel it's really important to get the community voice. And so we have partners from the NAACP, 2 chapters, the Urban League, the Denver Ministerial Alliance, and other community organizations who are actively at the table with us, talking about what they would like to see as outcomes and what an officer should be prepared to do when they're working in our communities.
Well, Landon, as I'm sure you're well aware, there's been a lot of talk about the idea of redistributing police funding, either into new programs within a given department or to other departments altogether. How does that idea intersect with this project that you're working on? I'm kind of imagining that a better trained officer is better for any budget than an undertrained officer.
Yeah, we would agree with that. We do recognize that the social workers in the state of Colorado have to have thousands of hours of training and have to have graduate degrees. And yet we're asking our police officers to essentially do some level of social work in the work that they're doing. We recognize that there is a need to better train our officers to be prepared, but we won't ever be able to train them to the level of what a social worker might have or a mental health caseworker might have. There is an argument for better funding some of these other aspects so that we're not asking our police officers to do work that they're not trained or equipped to handle.
Why is the community college system the right place to start this conversation about reshaping what these training programs look like?
We think we're the right place because a good portion of the law enforcement officers in the state come through our academies. We're in 40 locations in the state, and our colleges are embedded in the communities that we serve. And similar to law enforcement officers who are embedded in the communities that they serve when they become officers. So because of our physical locations, because of our community connections, we think we're a very logical place to really be at the center of this work.
Landon Pirius is Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs with the Colorado Community College System. Landon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to Colorado Edition from KUNC.